Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nicole from the Institute of Banking and Finance, and I'm delighted that you are able to join us for this IBF Masterclass, jointly organized with Garranto Academy, where we will look at human-centered design for digital banking and fintech. Mr. Vivian Gomez, Chief Design Officer and co-founder at the Human Factors Research and Design, will be leading today's session. Before I invite Vivian to take the lead in today's session, allow me to do a very brief introduction on the Institute of Banking and Finance and the resources we have to help professionals in the financial industry. IBF was established by the MAS in 1974 as a training provider to provide functional training for the financial industry. Since then, our role has evolved into one of the standards setting for financial services sectors and skills competencies. Since August 2018, we have also expanded our mandate to cover career advisory and job matching function for the financial services sector. We have thus adopted an integrated approach to skills development and jobs for the financial services sector. Here's a quick look at our services and how we support the industry across training, recruitment, and workforce transformation. You can find out more about our services and connect with us on any of these areas via our website. We have also put in place enhanced training support for the financial industry to further alleviate training costs during this period. The enhanced course fee subsidies are part of MAS support package that was announced in April last year to sustain and strengthen capabilities in the Singapore financial services and fintech sectors amid the current economic downturn. The aim of the enhanced training support is to encourage more companies to send their employees for training and upskilling so that they are in a better position to help the company move forward when economic activity normalizes. For the rest of 2021, we have raised funding support for training to 95% across the board for all FTS and IBF STS programs, subject to prevailing grant caps. The funding quantum will be reduced to 90% next year before going back down to pre-crisis levels in 2022. You can find more details on the enhanced training support on our website. In addition, IBF will also be supplementing the commercial training available with free webinars during this period to support the training needs of the industry. Financial professionals can also learn via the Learn at IBF mobile learning app for bite-sized learning at your own leisure. All these complimentary training are accorded with CPD hours. And that concludes my short intro. I'll now hand over the time to Vivian.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to meet everybody. I'm Vivian Gomes, co-founder and chief design officer at Human Factors Research and Design, HFR&D. And it's my pleasure, thanks to Garranto and IBF, to share my experiences with you. Today, we're going to mull over a lot of topics and things which may be very, very new to many of you. And some of you may have addressed that in some manner or the other. So without much ado, I will just take you through a small journey of my background. I started my career with Hallmark, Disney, HP, HFRD, and now Schnorr, which is our startup here in San Francisco. You can scan the QR code and connect on LinkedIn. We can stay in touch. I'm going to drive through my 30 years of experience in design, particularly in the digital realm of all kinds, right from insurance, banking, fintech, blockchain, crypto, traditional industry, large oil and gas, all of these put together, and my deep work with Google, Google Brain, Google for Startups, and other organizations that I learn from and bring these experiences to you. So we've seen in the last 2 years, particularly from the time 2019 and when COVID hit, the digital transformation acceleration had taken off. All the forecasts that the industries made for 2020 were all thumbs down, because nothing could be further from the truth of what was happening in human lives. And COVID-19 accelerated the digital transformation. The impact of technology from all fronts was high. And that acceleration the adoption of human-centered approach also came into light because many companies were caught off guard, many industries were caught off guard. This is just the beginning of that. But before we go there, I want to take you back to what is the relationship between man and design. So from early days onwards, and this is a smart journey and it's very essential. Hence, these slides, you will wonder what has this got to do with fintech and banking. But just to give you the idea that design and man have been inseparable. So mankind has forever visualized the future and designed things to extend human reach, and that includes technology. How do we do that? I'll take you to a form which is very simple for everybody to understand. Let's imagine, the old-fashioned tools. The early man used cut out trees to till the land. Then they used bulls and oxes. They even used horses and horse carriages because you couldn't do physical work. The amount of extension of work extended. Farming is easily understood and known, so we see more growth in those, more mechanized farming. The tractors were invented, but man's inventions, the inventions that technology and the outputs were towards extending reach. Every tool was in that manner. Then came more heavy duty mechanized means of farming. Why farming? It even moved to autonomous. So this huge tractor that you see here actually needs no man. It just does its work on its own, which in sense of digital realm is the AI. Now today technology controls what you search on the internet, what you shop at places, what you food you buy, almost everything that you see around, including your friends and other habits. There are technologies listening to you all the time. So how much of it is human centered? Human centered is because unless and until your services are not being consumed by people who pay for it, it doesn't make sense for technology to sell to technology and there's no transaction. I'm not talking about the back end. I'm talking about what drives our businesses, particularly in transactional commerce or fintech for that matter. There is the fourth industrial revolution as per World Economic Forum. What does that mean? So today we have seen a complete disruption of business models. Absolutely. And more innovation and productivity has come into being. Very edgy technologies, ethics and identity. There's a clash of agile technology governances, disruption of skills, security conflicts, and so on. So today there is the digital era for experience transformation, and that's where we are today. And if this uh, businesses into digital businesses are into transformation mode, then applying human-centered design is inevitable because uh, if you look at it, companies no longer compete for the price value alone, and experience, human-centered experience is what make or break situation for everybody. And consumers are no longer attracted to just companies who sell them goods. If you invest in your users' experience, which is people, your users will invest in your solutions. Banks have seen that all the time happening with tech changes and with rapid ways people are interacting, like going paperless at the same time asking for paper work done, and so on and so forth. So how is this going to tell us about what percentage and number game? Because today everybody here is a number game person. So to look at it from that point of view, there was a report in June 2019 that 85% of the customers believe that most brands fail to deliver their digital experience, whatever they're looking forward to. And almost 63% say that, if there's a problem and when the experience is poor, they're going to abandon. And similarly goes to those who are loyal to you. And bad experiences definitely have a very small window. Sometimes it's just 15 to 30 seconds. So the demand for quality human-centered experience in fintech and digital banking is here to stay. Again, to re-emphasize that the pandemic, the HCD landscape and priorities are rapidly shifting. They're moving towards more digital and human, and because of the risk from human to human contact, that has put lives at risk. So, and at the same time, there is the business growth side of it. There's almost 641 billion projected spend on customer experience technologies. A customer is a human, and hence the human-centered design approach in all the things that you do. Acquiring these skills is not difficult, and it can be applied to make business sense, because finally that's what counts. So if you look at it, well, let's take a walk down a brief journey of human-centered design on methods and frameworks. There are many, because the perils, as I call sometimes when I speak to startups at Google for startups and other places, they don't go for the just search for Google and download approach, because you don't know what was the context. Hence, what are these frameworks that people use, and let's take a look at them. Now, there are over 1,000 different human-centered design frameworks and methods put together. You can't go through all of them. What does it matter? So yeah, it's a surprising factor. So I'll run through a few of them. There is the IBM loop, Accenture Fjord, the traditional design thinking, which is adopted by many, where it's inspiration, ideation, and implementation, where people get together and form different strategies to diverge and converge. There is this famous Stanford D School, design thinking. These are separate. And then there is the Interaction Design Foundation and the Apple One, the SAP design thinking tools, and well-known British Double Diamond, which is again diverge and converge, where you discover, define, develop, and deliver. But how do you use these things, and how do you make a difference in what you are supposed to do in your businesses? Finally, not to forget the Google Design Sprint. The Google Design Sprint took the world by storm from 2016 and 17, and today is practiced very deeply. But it is not necessarily the ones that you can use for a fresh change and things like that. So if you have so many of them, and there are thousands of them, and you look at bookshelves, there are innumerable. How do you get to decide what's right for you and what works for you? So it puts up a question, correct? So here's what we can think about. How does one know what's best for me? Because there are choices out there. So if we have these choices, then let's look at what a famous scientist, Dr. Kurzweil, said. Uh, he said that if the human context is not in place, then you have a problem. So hence, human context at the center of your work is very important. And in digital banking too, you must align with the human centered need. When you do that, there's a lot of things that are going to solve, or you'll make something that is completely non-existent problem and a huge system in place, which is not going to solve the or build a solution that you want to. So at HCD and for fintech and digital banking, let's look at some comparisons. What was the old type like? So in the 20th century, you would do don't question me, just execute. Businesses were more technology centered, or they were need for what is need to be done, and just be done with it. Like the waterfall and linear methods, for example, or command and control. There was cooperation between individuals in silos. So you are given a task, you do that task, and you get out. There is no collaboration at that point or on a day-to-day basis of any sort. Requirements were driving the prototype in a descriptive world. That okay, I need to make a certain system. I need to make an app, or I might need to make an online loan form, or I want to do whatever it may be for you to do, maybe order food. And it felt all like a work. These are these traditional method sets. But then comes the human-centered design approach, where it's the 21st century. You do problem framing and questioning. There are methods and tools set in guidelines on how to do the problem framing. There's also empathetic and human-centered approach to it. And it is iterative. It's not the waterfall. It's iterative. You do back and forth. You make small changes. You get back. You resolve the problem. Talk to people, and it's agile. It's teams of teams. Collaboration is among cross-functional teams. Everybody gets together. There's no silos, and the prototypes drive the requirements. That you test something first, and then you build on it, instead of building first and then deploying and finding that it's a huge uh, gap between what the people wanted and what you wanted to do. And it feels like fun play, and that's where you see the huge difference. And the two cards are just metaphors, where the examples are very inevitable. So Rethinking traditional banking operations is no longer an option for us. It's rather a very important necessity. So if you look at it, thinking and applying rapid human-centered design-driven solution at all touch points becomes very important. So the bottom line is excellence in human-centered design is everybody's job. And as we've seen earlier, there are some more numbers here to share with you. And this comes from a couple of very resourceful places like McKinsey and Gartner and others, that 30% of the customers will leave a brand and not come back because of bad experiences. Or 27% of companies, uh, they are they are saying that their priorities lies in customer experience intelligence, and a lot more on proactive customer services. And when you change to technology, for example AI, to enable these processes to orchestrate, and these are all findings from Gartner and so on. So human-centered experience are non-negotiable. Now you're saying that, okay, why are we emphasizing so much on the number game? How do we get about it to what is it that we're coming to? So what creeps in is biases because of the haste and rush. Just like the way I rushed in the first few slides and brought came up to this point. Uh, and these biases are becoming a regular challenge to us, right from 2019, 2021. And if you just search for these, you'll see that companies are fighting now to reduce these biases. That, okay, if AI-enabled banks are having problems or technology related or digital, how do you solve these and more about? So unbiased digital banking experience then becomes a must, because the way people interact is not the way we would do in pre-digital days. It's completely different when it approaches from a human-centered design point of view. It's not just visual beautification, it's about psychological patterns of things. And that's where it becomes important that, are you giving preferences to technology, smart algorithms over a well-thought human-centered use case? What are your use cases actually talking about? The biggest mistakes many digital banking and insurance companies do, and we've met so many of them. We talked to them, and we've seen that sometimes it's a simple problem has been overlooked because it was not thought, or it was thought that, oh, it's so obvious. Because specialists sometimes think that it is, oh, it's so easy, why isn't anybody doing it? And that's where the problem lies. So when you move from training algorithms to improving human-centered use cases, you made a rise in of the investment and what you are getting out of human-centered approaches. So ask this question to yourself: is your digital banking solution human-centered? What do you think? Or are you only doing it because everybody is doing it? Many times we're just running the race to catch up and add up, and at the same time close down also. I see so many companies that have not been able to keep up to pace with the pandemic, because they were not digital centered from a human centered point of view. Uh, there were so many people who lost businesses or contacts, or including in the fintech and banking sector, where a human-centered approach being missing, since it was missing, has created situations and silos where onboarding and ramping up human-centered digital outcomes were very difficult. So that is the one breath. Now I want to play a small game, and would request that, I know I can't see everybody over here, but I believe you will do this little experiment with me. Write down on a piece of paper, if you have a piece of paper, a fruit that I'm going to tell you about, because this is how things turn slowly. The picture starts changing, the visual starts changing. Think of a fruit. No, not a fruit. Think of an apple. Okay, was it this or was it this? Let's play a game, a small game. Okay, think of a shoe. This one or this one or this one. We can think of all kinds of ways the design of a shoe is. Now, let's say if I'm going to teach this shoe to a computer, what would I do? If I had written this, it would completely miss out the other designs of the shoes. That's exactly how machine learning algorithms think. What is machine learning in that case? Machine learning is when technology makes things possible for us, like navigation or recommendations or translations that they do or voice recognition. They see it from patterns. Traditional programming used to do it typing it physically, and now machines they find patterns, and then through those patterns they're able to teach us what really works, what doesn't work. But just because it is learning from patterns, it doesn't mean it's true. So human biases are in all the things that we do, and we are transferring those to the technology. And when we do that, it relates to bias. For example, interaction bias. What's an interaction bias? A game was taught on computers for people to draw shoes, and when they drew these, they missed out ones that look like these. So similarly, latent bias. If I talk to you, say, oh, let's think about all the physicists, and if you list them all down, you'd miss out and look at men as a latent bias, or selection bias, where if you took all the photos that you had and you put down, do you think you have addressed everybody? So these are some of the things that happen in the way when we use technology. So bias is taught to the machine. It doesn't happen just on its own. It's not computers making the mistake. It's we training the computers. But if it was human centered, then you would have something called data fairness, or fairness of understanding what it's all about. Now there are many reasons why this happens. For example, overconfidence bias, confirmation bias, hindsight, and so on and so forth. So I will get back to these in a bit. Most importantly, what we see is the cognitive bias. Now, some cognitive biases are a byproduct of human processing limitations, resulting in lack of appropriate mental models and mechanisms. So, for example, there are more than 150 plus biases, but a few of them that I wrote here: scarcity, availability, attrition, and so on and so forth. Uh, the whole science behind it is very complex. But let's figure out this complex diagram that you're seeing and look at four important parts. One is too much information, not enough meaning, need to act fast, and what should we remember? This is exactly what happens when you're doing a digital transfer. Your whole solution has a lot of things, but is it too much information? What is it that is enough, and that person can quickly make a decision and not having to remember? There's been consistently for over 40 years, human-centered design has been finding these problems, that memory versus recall. For example, are you supposed to memorize a certain operation, or should it be intuitive enough for you? Like if I say, turn the door of a handle, pull a drawer. So you don't have to think, because your motor thoughts would tell you exactly what to do. If I say pick up a pen and write, you know how to hold the pen and you write, because you already know what to do. And so common cognitive biases in the fintech and digital banking are also similar kind. I'll pick a few of these over here. For example, a preset bias, deciding to act in favor of the present moment against investing in the future. So people look at what's happening current and they wait and watch, because that's a present bias. Similarly, there is uh, unconscious bias, accepting or rejecting recommendation based on perceptions. Everybody has perceptions, but these drive into some of the biases that we feed into the systems, and how we operate. Sometimes it's information bias. You have too much information, and you don't know how much of it is really useful or not, and it does not have any effect of the action on it. Or for example, following others regardless of the own belief, and that happens very commonly. For example, there are many countries that suffered COVID because some people watch some other people without mask, and they hit out and had mingled together, or created scenarios where there was which was not supposed to be a protocol, but because it just followed others regardless of own belief and data that they already had, and so on, so forth with the kinds of biases that have. So being human becomes very important. So don't forget that being human centered is your priority. Technology can't solve everything. Bots, autofills, layers of digital tech shouldn't complicate the experiences. Now, people expect human centered interactions with your system at some point or the other at all times. At all times, people want things to be just natural. There's a famous book by an author called Steve Crook called Don't Make Me Think. I read that book a few years ago, and a few years ago, or 15 years ago, that book was written, very famous, and it helped recollect that why should we make people think? Why can't it just things be very easy to do? So the approach of human centered becomes very important. So user experience and customer experience are central to human centered experiences. So we call it HCX, or human centered experience, where there is the learning, the patterns, the behaviors, the modeling of the mind. At the same time, the fair, unbiased, empathetic, emotional, and so on, many other aspects of how this works. So keep human-centered experience design as a central equation of your fintech and banking strategy, design, and implementation. Then we should get on to the journey. What is this journey that we talk about? Let's see that through an HCD point of view. So if you look at it, the initial is always about uncertainty, a lot of research and things that you want to do. Then you get into patterns, insights, concepts, and prototypes, and move on to clarity, and then focus on the design. So this is what happens. As you see, it's a simple scribble, but it speaks a thousand words. That from data driven, you go to the end design. You don't do the other way around. You don't create a design and then create the confusion. You move from going back and forth with an iterative, agile manner in the 21st century approach that we talked about. So HCD is applicable at every touch point of the banking industry. Now, how we treat that central point of view is defining a strategy and bringing HCD into the focus. And once you do that, you're ready to launch and move into the next set of building great experiences for your customers in digital banking and fintech, including in insurance or blockchain or any other service that you're creating. So I would like to take further and talk to you about human centered and artificial intelligence guidelines. These are uh, from particularly from what we released some time ago while I worked with Google's team at some point, and we delivered the first workshop in China. It was about how to get human centered design and AI to work together. So it becomes important, and there are 6 chapters here which I will run through, given the view of time. I may, I'll just touch upon them briefly. So human needs and defining success. That's the first part. Can your digital solution solve this problem in a unique way, or is it just mimicking something? If it is not unique, it's replaceable. So it's very important that evidence of user needs is defined first in the way you create your tech stack for the service of you of mankind of humankind. Then the augmentation versus automation. Some things are augmented behavior and some things are automation. When you define these, what might be these that will help? So, and then giving the design rewards to your function, like you gamify the experiences, you add value to them when they surpass something, the way you message these things and define those. And finally, these uh, success values that you define becomes the criteria for your goal, and how you nudge the user to walk through those journeys and come out successful. So sometimes you have huge amounts of data, and how do you take that data and evaluate things? So just to have data is not enough, but to understand that data is very important. Get to understand and decide what kind of data you need, whether you are not already using it, or some of it needs to get out, and understand the sources that it comes from. Data sheet checklist and essential checklist becomes very important, because you walk through the checklist to prepare your data for use of an AI product or digital automation and things like that. So Then those evaluation data collection points becomes your design raters. Who are these design raters? They are who understand your labels of your data, why, how, when they can do it, and when they can use it well, and that increases your metrics on how technology supports the design outcomes for human by AI or the technology. So these, in that sense, the model tuning with user feedback becomes very important. You get a real feel of the end users and not opinion based. So you get out, you do research, you do there are methods of user research that you learn through some of the programs that we have. We will talk about it in a bit. And then the other things are mental models. Mental models are areas where you have people represent something that resonates easily for them. For example, a button. A button is not a physical button on a screen, but it looks like a button, and hence people know what to do with it because the mental models are easy to identify. And creating these experiences for them where existing versus new mental models are taught easily to create a easy to understand onboarding journey to any feature. Even a feature needs an onboarding. It's not just login credentials or how you onboard the people when they get to your site alone. And then comes the explainability and trust. Now you can build a system and just dunk it on the user, but is it really useful? How do you address that? So trust calibration becomes very important. Imagine situations where users could under trust or over trust your features and functionalities. Determine which users interactions require explanation and what kind of explanation do they need. So you have to help them solve those problems on their own, not not have complications to pick up the phone and call you, because that will increase your support cost. The other ways is about testing with user research. This is the user research is one part where many people want to skip it because it seems like, oh no, we know what we want to do. But make sure that explanation of visuals and messages that you have meet the street requirement of it. That's why in the automotive industry, for example, they have test uh, uh, roads, they have test cases, they have test on the road for various reasons. But we don't do that so much with the digital tools and digital uh, solutions that we build. We do a short cycle sometimes, and many times skip end user researches. It becomes very crucial and important. So your feedback and control is sacred in that sense. So when you know your users' expectations and what they want to control it, everybody loves control of their system. If a system misbehaves, you want to know why it's happening. Are you blaming yourself? Is your user blaming themselves for the problem that system has created? So user expectations and controls becomes very important. And review these situations from time to time, and where and how these needs can be elevated to solve faster. Then comes priority of feedback and the audit prioritization. Audit feedback mechanisms define the priority and specifically the feedback signals and how and when to integrate these, because it's not necessary that people are going to go and check your FAQs or sit and chat with the chatbot. Things are changing. Voice is coming, for example, or other modes and means, the way digital serves human needs. So it's important to validate those feedback mechanisms, conduct user research to understand whether or not your feedback mechanisms are working as intended. Because there are many times intended and design versus actual completely mismatched. It doesn't work. So there are these uh, metrics and tools available for you to do that. Errors and graceful error failures. When a system crashes, it is a huge problem for end users. So there should be never a time when a user thinking that it is because they did something wrong. If you look at some, the baby boomers or the late tech adopters, there's the digital native and the digital adopters. The digital adopters commonly feel that, oh, if I touch something, it will be a problem. So they take assistance from Gen Z or millennials and so on. So if you can give them mechanisms to fail gracefully and know what their errors are, it helps audit and make corrections earlier in the phase. That's where the iterative approach comes. So, collecting these error rates, defining them, and potential solutions to them makes a big difference. And finally, the quality assurance, which is a very important part of it, because when you prioritize how you test and you monitor and you report these things back into a well-tested system, you have applied the human-centered design with technology, the frameworks and methodology all in one in a seamless manner. So very soon we have the IBF is going to provide you human-centered design certification. Feel free to scan the QR code on your screen and get in touch with Garranto Academy for the more answers on when, how you can learn human-centered design and apply to fintech and digital banking. With that, I come to the. I have 5 minutes more, but I come to the end of my presentation. Um, I could take some questions here. Does anybody have any questions? Looks like no. So, okay, the question is, can you share an incident where you managed to incorporate human-centered design into a solution? Certainly. I cannot mention the name of a customer, uh, but I can tell you. There's a famous bank in the Middle East India region, and this is a pandemic situation. So during that time, the lockdown happened, and they reached out to us that we have to. It was a weekend, and we have to get all of our systems and people to work from home, as you all know. So what we did is we put together a mural board, a digital mural board. Mural is a digital workspace, and got the strategic team, which was the president, the CIO, and a couple of the leaders, a group of 7 people, and did a quick design sprint, the one that I talked about earlier. And with this design sprint, we were able to iterate and find out how would they reach the problem statement was how would we reach our customers and let them know that we are there for them. And this particular banking group also has an insurance part. So they wanted to tie the two together and provide better health, better services for people from health and finance point of view. So, and call centers were closing down. So how do you do that? So we quickly built a prototype, got people on digital medium to bounce off those thought processes, build a set of tools for testing them. So build a script, talk to the users, got their feedback on the iterations that we made. It was a wireframe, a quick and dirty one, which was made as low as using a PowerPoint. And then from there, the digital version was made using some tools from Adobe and Figma, and these were translated into quick development modes. And all these exercises reduced 150,000 user base to be doing self-service system. So the outcome was incorporating and building a self-service uh, support system for this banking group, and the turnaround time of that was a quarter, 3 months. In 3 months, from design, research, prototyping, and delivery, and this used the other part of it was this used all the current data of their user base. So there was nothing additional that they had to do. And since it was human-centered design, because business, sales, marketing, technology, customer front-ending, customer support, and the design development team, there were 7 teams working together, build this together in an iterative, agile manner. That's where the difference came. And this company did a 700% profit in the year that ended, financial year that ended in January. Is there any other question? So Andy is got a question that it's very clear. You need to move. Please uh, ask anytime and reach out to me, and we'll be happy to share more with you. Any other questions? Do you want me to answer anything from my slides that I just showed you through? Okay, Nicole, I think it's over to you.
Okay, thank you, Vivian, for the very insightful session. We've now come to the end of today's masterclass. If you guys want to stay connected with IBF, you may do so via the following platforms. With regards to the certificate of attendance, it will be sent to your registered email within 5 working days. Thanks again for joining us. Till next time. Goodbye.